Hi, friends. Lauren here. This week, we have quite a treat. It's an encore presentation of Nancy Wilson. Yes, the Nancy Wilson from the legendary rock band Heart. And she's talking about big life lessons. And this was just an incredible episode. I think it was one of my favorites because she was just so beautifully open and honest. She was about to go out on tour. Actually, Heart started their tour, and then her sister Anne was diagnosed with cancer, so they had to postpone it. But I believe that's going to be back on. But they were touring with Cheap Trick, and she opened up about her family, about writing music, living well in order to age well, and the story behind Barracuda. And then she talked about finding love in her late 50s. And it's just an incredible story. And so give a listen, and we will be back in February with new episodes. Take care.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Lisa.
And we're flipping the script about growing older.
Our guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing. Welcome to the Anti-Aging Podcast.
Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother.
Today's guest is the epitome of badass. Nancy Wilson, guitarist, singer, songwriter, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer from the seminal rock band Heart. Magic Man, Barracuda, Crazy on You, and Dog and Butterfly, among countless other hits. Heart didn't break barriers. They brought to light that barriers even existed. When young rock fans were falling in love with the Beatles, Nancy and her sister Anne wanted to be the Beatles. That naivete served them. It allowed them to confidently forge forward with their love of making music without once questioning their place. It was only upon their journey they realized they were women rockers, and for decades have sidestepped the misogyny of the music biz, bucked the musical trends, and remained relevant and securely stationed in their place on the pantheon of rock legends.
Whoa. I feel really good right now.
Oh, good.
Wow.
We're off to a good start.
Here's $20, man.
I won't tell anybody that you have the checks in the mail.
Yeah.
Nancy recently released a beautiful solo album, You and Me, paying tribute to some of her favorite artists. Over the decades, she has partnered with and championed dozens of musicians and bands who have followed in her footsteps. Nancy is also a mom, a wife, and preparing to embark on the 2024 Heart Tour. So we are thrilled she's made the time to chat with us today. Thank you for being here, Nancy.
I'm very happy to be here and see you again and meet you and be part of this, the coolest title for any podcast I've ever heard of. Then thank you for the glowing introduction. I mean, as a matter of fact, doing this right now is really a good time to do it because just this morning, the deal is hereby signed by me and Anne both for the 2024 Heart World Tour. So
Congratulations.
we're really doing it. It's really happening. There's no question marks left to question. So we're, it's on the rails as of today, and I can talk freely about it.
Oh, fantastic. Well,
Yay.
we have so many things we want to talk to you about, and we're going to try to not keep you past the hour. But I'm going to start just because, Lauren's like, how do you know Nancy? And so just before the pandemic, our friend Eric Tesmer, who's this incredible guitar player in Austin.
Amazing.
My husband David and I were still living in Austin at the time. And my husband and I had a music studio, Clubhouse Austin, that David had cultivated over the years. So Nancy and Eric had met and connected at some private event. And so David and Eric's manager had made arrangements for Nancy and Eric to work on some songs together. So we brought David and Jen brought Nancy to Austin. And they picked a couple of really fantastic songs and worked together in Clubhouse Austin together.
Yeah.
And that was incredible.
That was right before the big shutdown, too.
Before. In fact, David was just saying March 13th was when, stuff was supposed to be released, and that was the day of lockdown.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It was right at my birthday is the 16th. And I remember, the same thing. Everything just stopped, including new music, including your life, any tour plans or any other. Well, you're not going to go into a recording studio for who knows how long, or do any other music or walk out your front door for that matter, because at that point, way before there were vaccines, made, it was really scary. It was the scariest thing, because you didn't know enough about anything to know if it was safe to breathe the air or touch a package that had been delivered to your house.
Oh my gosh, people were washing their groceries.
Sanitizing everything. Yes, really nice to look back and be fully vaxxed for everything all the time, like we used to as kids.
Well, and you're probably even more cognizant of that now, because like when you go into venues, you're like in there with packed people. So that's like kind of a big deal for you.
Yeah.
I read this Rolling Stone review today, this really nice review of your new album. And it said like when the rest of us were staying home and trying to figure out how to put these like puzzles together, they're like, Nancy, you made us all look lazy. She went and recorded an album.
Yeah, well, I didn't know how. I've always been like in a professional studio with professional studio engineers and producers, like your husband, who is one of my favorites all time. And so my girlfriend helped me. She's sort of a tech head.
Is that Sue Ennis?
No, it was my friend Julie Bergman, actually. So she's a writer, and she's actually also a private investigator. She's and a guitar player. So she figured out how to use this 4-track little interface with my good mics that I already had sitting around and my good amps that I had sitting around in a room that when we first moved here to Northern California, I finally got my very first ever studio space, all my own, where I could leave shit out, let the mess be what it is. I know where everything is because I left it there. Nobody's going to mess with my mess. And so she figured out how to hook up the mics, and we just made I was writing songs anyway because I got really sick of the 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzles really fast. The one I was doing was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it was too many black pieces, like
a lot of black.
The robe goes on for her robe.
But then she had
the
collar broke it up, though. Huh?
Yeah, the collar. I was like, I got the collar, and then after that, the robe. No, not the robe.
So you recorded in your house?
Yeah,
in her home studio.
It's our new house that we just had moved into. Left Topanga Canyon, having worked in LA a long time, for the Northern California coast, basically, because I always wanted to live up in these parts, because there's enough Seattle about it, where I grew up, but not too much LA about it, so it's the perfect balance between the nice rainy Seattle, clean.
Well, and you were born in San Francisco, right?
That's true. Yes, I was. And
so you kind of came home in a way.
So came home very much with where seasons happen and stuff like that. So I got a new house with a room in it, which was a 2-room apartment over a garage, not connected to the house, with its own entrance and exit. So right next to the house, and easy to go up the stairs and just get lost, and let time just slip through. And so I did a lot of singing and writing and Zooming with various other musicians and meetings, and trying to play songs with people remotely, and write songs and record albums with files just flying everywhere, and notes, and then more notes for the bass part file, and then more notes to the bass player, and then sends back another file to have, I'll go with that one, So it was.
Oh my gosh, that's a crash course in technology during the pandemic for you.
I really have a phobia about trying to run digital gear. I don't know. I'm really not the Chrome thing is like,
you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Did you write your songs in your studio, or do you have a place where you like to write? Or
Yeah, well, I kind of write everywhere, but that's the place where you could get away and like try stuff out in the room, but with sing it into the room and go, or no, maybe. And Sue Ennis, aforementioned collaborator for since I was little, we wrote a lot of heart music together with Anne, and we started collaborating for my album. She is independently a songwriter, and so is a friend of ours, Ben Smith, who used to play drums with Heart for many, he was the longest ever member of that lineup of Heart. So Ben has some good writing chops, and I had some stuff, and we put stuff together from what they had and what I had, and worked together.
Well, I love that track that you and Sue wrote together. That it's the title track.
The title track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
She lost her mom before I lost our mom, and she had written a song called, it was the same melody, basically, the same kind of a song. It was called Follow Me. So she's kind of talking to the spirit, of her mom in the song. And I wanted to write a song about my mom and who I feel the spirit in me all the time. And so we kind of combined our two mom songs into that song. And people, when they first heard the album, I put it on first because I figured, well, okay, if you're gonna be like wildly, nakedly honest and emotionally honest with anything, you should start right there. Like first out of the gate is the song that makes you cry, And a lot of people, they were at home, shut down, they heard the song, and they were like, oh, I have to cry as soon as I heard that song.
It totally sucked me in.
Yeah.
And, I read your book a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I read a little bit more of it preparing to get together with you today, and was reminded of what a force your mom was.
Yeah. Military woman.
Yeah. But still, she was also like, I think I was like, wow, I wonder if that's where like Anne and Nancy really got their sort of independent spirit, like creatively. And she was, even though she was a military mom, she was also like just took the bull by the horns and did the things.
No, she was super badass woman.
Yeah.
Just speaking of, she had, she came from Oregon City, Oregon, a little town still. But she was a product of a really, not a strict religious, but a Christian support group of a religious family. And her dad was the Irish tenor in their local choir, the church that they would just walk over to, in their neighborhood. And all of us grew up with aunts and uncles and cousins together, and ukuleles and singing and hootenannies and harmonizing, like you guys with your clubhouse, I just was like, oh, this is like my youth. I love the clubhouse vibe because it's, anybody with a guitar or a piano or just a voice or, or any kind of ham bone thing they want to try to do, it's right up my alley for sure. And my mom was a big ham bone. She would go to costume parties with a beard, like a shadow and a hat and a cane and a man's suit, and be Charlie Chaplin, which was that was kind of her Beatles, The comedy of Charlie Chaplin was her Beatles.
I didn't think we'd get to it this soon, but I know that Lauren was wanting to ask you about an even more distant female relative.
Oh, yes.
I do want to hear that story. It's incredible. But it just seems like your mom, like you mentioned, she was a force, but like she really, I think, raised you and your sisters in a way that you didn't know, like, oh, we can't do certain things because we're girls or what. Didn't she give you that kind of sense?
She really did give us that. She married into Marine Corps aristocracy. My grandpa on my dad's side was retired as a 4-star brigadier general in the Marine Corps. So it was the lineage that she married into, with the white gloves and all of the cocktail dresses and the, officers' cotillions and officers, clubs and stuff where the women would come once a week or whatever they did. They would have their dinners, and she would actually make the cocktail dress herself for the occasion and wear the gloves, and smoke really elegantly, when it was cool. But she had that amazing flair about her. She had a light that came out of her, and she was a social being. So, she would just, love to talk to people and use her hands and talk about where they came from and their family's history. And
I loved reading about her evolution. I mean, 'cause she, throughout the book, she evolved. She was reading Ellen Watts during the counterculture period. And I love the story about your parents her pot and
smoking weed with you guys.
Yeah, she wasn't stuck in this era. She evolved too.
She really evolved. Well, her rock star was Judy Garland too, who had a real, almost a machismo, woman. The strength of Judy Garland, and she liked a lot of strong women, singers, Barbra Streisand, and big personalities, women that take up space. And she turned into such a spiritualist, and in the human potential movement of the late 60s, the I'm okay, you're okay stuff, and the Jonathan Livingston Seagull time. And Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, so many hootenannies where we're all singing Teach Your Children together and stuff it was by the fireplace, with wine and cigarettes and stuff like the time, but and so she really was a force, and she had a lot of she had to develop a lot of confidence within the military lifestyle. Because she was really looked down upon as a bumpkin from Oregon City, Oregon. So she had to be stylish, and she had to, own the room, basically. So she did. And I think we got a lot of her energy and her spiritual energy. And it's more like the dad. I'm more like the mom in our family.
Is there anything that you learned from watching her age?
Well, she aged gracefully. We're talking about that too. There's that. There's age, the big scary topic of age. I'm looking at 70 this month, and I'm like, really?
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's not what it used to be.
She had a joke about it. She had to joke around about, she was a model in her early years, and she'd go oh, well, there goes the old, top of the hand. Look, I used to, my hand looks like the Ganges River connects there now, She would have some joke about how different you look when you're older and just make light of it. What are you going to do? You're going to stop, are you going to try to stop the river,
I mean, that's kind of why we wanted to do this, because it's no one can stop the aging process. It's about living well. And you're a huge representative of living well, because you've been playing music and touring and out there doing this thing that you do for decades.
Yeah.
And I saw you in Minneapolis a few years ago, just before the pandemic, at a stadium show. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts were opening for Heart, and you invited David and I to the show. And I was just and I've seen you guys play before, and I was wow, you were up there with your boots and your heavy electric guitar, swirling around the stage, singing. I'm like, how does she do that? And then now you're getting ready, on the eve of a 70th birthday, to go on tour and do what you've always done. Can you talk about that? What kinds of things that you do, the mindset, physical, whatever it does, you do that helps you?
There's a lot more to it when you're older, obviously, to maintain, your strength. I'm strengthening, every couple days I go and I strengthen with weights. And I breathe and I stretch and I do plank, and I do. I don't do a lot of cardio type stuff. I like weight bearing and working with. And if you're in a hotel, a lot of the time, you've got gravity. If you know what to do, how to use it, or how to resist gravity by using gravity to your benefit. But I haven't been drinking it at all for a while now, just by choice to feel better when I wake up. And I like a good party. I've had a lot of really good parties along the way, some of them with you guys. But right now I feel like I'm in training. In April, I'm going to be out for like 20 shows and then a break. And then I'll be out for 20 shows and a break, 20 or 30 shows, at a time in a leg, all the way into all the way to the end of October when I leave in April.
So with all that adrenaline when you're on the road, how do you wind down and go to sleep? Because the sleep is such an important factor of...
Yeah, it's not that easy to get the right sleep, especially if you're not somebody who just can sleep anywhere, which I've never been. Because you think and you worry, and then you overthink and gig your worry habits. But
what are you overthinking? Are you worried about your shows or your kids, or what are you thinking about?
There's always the politics. Like me and Anne, like the last 7 months of getting this tour planned and getting the deal done and getting all the details pounded out have been treacherous. It's been Chinese water torture, stall after stall after stall, and delay after delay, and a lot of things hanging on a lot of other things before it can be decided that what else happens after that, all that kind of really stressful stuff. But as of today, I took the longest, hottest shower I've taken in a long time. After I signed that agreement,
nice.
It felt really good, like pounding out those treacherous details, but it pays off in the end. And, we get a lot of really professional people that are out there with you to do it with. So there's not somebody like gumming up the works all the time. So usually there's somebody like that in any given, some ego tripper, some power hungry person who's in it just for the money or for themselves. So there's always one of those in every bunch. So we've surmounted that part, and we got past that part so far today, at least. And so that's a lot of the stuff that you kind of stress. Like I worry for Jeff, who really knows the business so well, having been in movies and TV.
Your husband?
Yeah, my husband, Jeff with a G. And, and he's done a lot of business with a lot of entertainment people in various ways in the entertainment industry. He could protect me in that realm. And like that would be one of my biggest stresses of all, is to see him suffer through all of being doing all of that stressful work on my behalf.
I'm sure it's important to him, though, that he's able to do that, so that it frees you up to be, focus on the creative stuff.
Exactly. Well, I am definitely a creative through and through. I'm really pretty clueless about the reality of how it's really supposed to happen business-wise,
Seems like you've done okay.
Well, we've managed. There's been some really good people along the way that helped us.
Can you share some of how self-care has evolved over time?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like a hot shower and strength training, but even just mind's practices or anything that helps to keep you feeling vital and good.
Well, it's really kind of how to try to quiet your mind some of the times. And I like to do yoga, and I like to lie on the floor and sink into the earth kind of stuff.
Shavasana.
Yeah, Shavasana, exactly that. And just kind of lose your selfhood for a while and just try to feel like you're an animal on the planet, that's breathing without all the other stuff to worry about. And
well, we often forget we breathe. I mean, we take that for granted, don't we?
Don't forget to breathe.
So connecting with that is a big deal.
There's a song I still want to write called Breathing Lessons. It's a good title, but it's about what you put in your mouth. It's about what you drink and eat. I haven't had red meat for a long time, so it really helps to feel lighter and to eat really clean food, healthy food. And sometimes splurge, like, okay, I'm going to have that chocolate now. And so, I'll have the lava cake.
Well, we interview a lot of lifestyle doctors, and everything you're describing is what they recommend because
that's good.
It's not what you do. It's not the occasional thing that's going to impact you. It's what your daily habits are, right?
Yeah.
And also the strength training. They said as we get older, the best way to keep strong muscle mass is more about using our muscles than it is even what we're eating. Like our protein needs actually don't increase.
Yeah.
It's more about keeping our muscles strong. So
right, and when you're building your muscle, you do more protein. I drink. I boil water and I drink bone broth powder with collagen powder in it. Whisk it up, and I try to drink that every day.
Sounds yucky.
It's kind of yucky, but you get the chicken broth and the unflavored collagen powder. Unflavored.
Do you still eat nuts?
I still like nuts, yeah.
Because
especially if they have chocolate on them.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, who was it? Well, we just interviewed Dr. Michael Greger, who has a book, How Not to Age, and he talks about the importance of nuts. And I the reason I'm asking, it's kind of funny, and you probably are like, this was a blip on your radar, but when we flew to LA to meet you, and you guys were doing work in Alan Marino's studio, I was like,
oh yeah.
How can I even help this endeavor? And I'm like, I know, I'll do craft services. So they gave me a list of food for you, and I ran to the store, and I thought I ticked everything off, and I came back, and you're like, do you have any nuts? And I'm like, oh my God, I left the nuts off. And I ran back to the store and got the nuts, but I was like, oh, that's so good. She eats nuts. They're so good for her.
You went back to the store again.
But I was like, I had this simple task, and I failed. I'm like, how did I forget the one thing she wants?
I forgot the nuts. Oh my God.
Did you
that's
cook,
funny.
Lisa?
No, I don't think I did. There wasn't a lot of time because they were working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Nancy, do you like to cook?
I really like to cook. I do cook. I cook most every night when I'm home. It's kind of therapeutic for me to cook because I'm pretty good at it at this point. I used to go on recipes and learn recipes, and then, but I have greatest hits, things I could just remember to do. I've written a few cookbooks just for the family over the years for Christmas, like, here's my world famous, French chicken. Here's my world famous Caesar salad,
Do you get like a personal trainer or anything?
Yeah, I just did hire a personal trainer for the first time. I mean, I've trained a lot without a specifically personal trainer. But, when you're traveling, like I'm planning to pack one of my 2 wardrobe cases for the road with workout stuff, like the mats, the yoga mats that are larger, the massage chair for the actual makeup dressing room area, so the body worker can come and just do your neck and shoulders and arms and your hands, because my hands need a lot of help. I mean, they're doing fine, but that's going to be a lot of work for my hands.
Well,
and
if you're playing guitar,
especially acoustic guitar, and I don't use light strings either, so it's like, whoa.
So I want to bring the conversation back to our topic of being aging like a badass. Is like you were married before, and you have 2 grown children.
Yeah.
And you're now remarried, and you both married with grown children, and you're still friends with your ex. And so I guess what I'm curious about is like, how have you managed or evolved relationships over time from when you were younger as you get older? Have things changed for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's eras in your life, like when I think of my 20s, I feel like that was a whole different person then, and I connect the connection is all the way still there, especially creatively, to my songwriter self, my younger songwriter self, because that's the same person today. But the things outside of the creative life that you actually endure throughout your life, like the relationships and the loss and, the divorce and losing your parents and having a child or two and, worrying for their safety when they're every age from there forward for the rest of your life and their well-being. And so I think every lifetime is full of lifetimes. There's many lifetimes in each lifetime.
Amen.
I think if you can maintain a kind of a flexibility in your soul, and I believe in soul, I know it's real, then you can grow with all of the pain and the hurt and the loss and the change that you have to get through. So I think it's all food for your soul to get older, wiser, and stronger.
So like using those lessons to grow rather than like clinging to mistakes.
Right. Rather than you kicking yourself for being a fool or not knowing better, or why did I ever marry that? Or why did I let myself lose that relationship? Was it my fault? All that stuff that usually, like with a divorce, I cried every day for a couple of years over that, my first loss of a marriage, because we had kids. I saw how it worked on them, how hard it was for them. And I thought it could be fixed, and it wasn't really fixable. So I hung on too long, all that stuff. But then there was one day I came out the other end feeling like I can let go. Okay. It was like 2 years, but I can let go of that. And then I can even think of allowing myself to feel like I might have another chance at another relationship even, which is really doubly difficult for somebody like me. When I was 58 is when mutual friends kind of said, hey, you should go to dinner with that Jeff Bywater, because he's like the best mensch in the business, is how it was put to me. And it's like, okay, well, this was my manager at the time, Carol Peters. And she said, you should go out with him. And I said, I can't date. I can't go on a date. I'm 56. I've been married for 23 years, whatever it was. And she's like, yes, you can. And so I'll go with you. And so I had my first date with
She went on the date
with my manager because I was so scared. I was so fucking scared to be vulnerable and to risk it,
Did you hit it right off with Jeff?
Yeah, I had actually met him at a meeting before with Carol, because I was trying to get pregnant for a long time doing in vitro stuff. And we had a meeting about getting music into television because I was at home instead of on the road. So we hit it off. So I kind of remembered him, and I remembered he was cute and really nice, funny, and like a dad, a cool dad, talked about kids and dogs, So I kind of, I was just able to barely trust the situation enough to go out with my manager to dinner. And the second date was with my lawyer.
Oh my gosh, Nancy.
How did Jeff feel about that?
Jeff.
How did Jeff feel about you turning up with your lawyer?
Well, he knew my lawyer too, because he actually worked with my lawyer as well. And it was kind of like the divorce was finalizing, and it was part of the conversation. It was not very comfortable. But, we always joke about that now, because I was like, we went to a play or a movie with them, and after dinner, I was so afraid he was going to do the they try to touch me or something.
Sneak his arm around you.
I must be old-fashioned, but yeah, I was just scared as shit to go on a date, And
Yeah.
he's a beautiful man. It turns out, like 12 years later, he protects me with his life and all of his life skills. And, I don't know if the heart tour would have happened without him, actually.
Well, we're
that's
grateful
so
for
nice.
Jeff because
Kudos.
we're very happy to know that Heart is still touring.
Yeah.
One of the things I really admire about you is that you've got these lifelong friendships, like Sue Ennis and you've known like Kelly Curtis since you were kids, and
I know.
And you had such like a strong family growing up.
Yeah.
Oh, tell the Hannah Dustin story now.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
this is an incredible story because this is in your DNA.
Yeah, there was an axe woman in my history. She was one of the first axe women in the Dustin line of my mother's side of the family, and she came from Haverhill, Massachusetts, in the 1800s, and it was the time where Native Americans were rebelling against the settlers that were coming into their land, and so there was a raid on the her settlement and her family right after she had a baby. Hours after baby she had a child, the Indians raided their farm, took the baby, smashed its head against the tree, killed a bunch of people, and took them hostage. So took her hostage and walked them 4 miles and miles and miles up towards French Canada, Arcadia, or Acadie area. And she found a way, while being tied up to a tree, to get loose, and decided to get her people loose and escape with them in the dead of night while the Native Americans were asleep. And she did. And as they were leaving the forest, she wait a minute. If I go back to, my town near Washington, D.C., I need proof that I have done this. So she went back and got a tomahawk, scalped some Indians, took their scalps into the river on one of their canoes and paddled up to the Washington, D.C. area, presented the scalps to the just new government that was forming at the time in the capital, and got a monument, the first monument ever erected to a woman, built in Haverhill, Massachusetts. She holds a tomahawk, and I went back there years ago and took a picture there for the book, because it was my guitar in hand, like a tomahawk,
Your axe.
The axe woman, yeah. Regardless of the context today under which it might be viewed, which is still controversial, controversial because she was viewed at down the nose of the higher, the male hierarchy of the day, because she acted out. So there's all this history about her in the books about her that put a little black cat picture next, like she was a witch, because she acted out.
Because she was a powerful woman.
She killed people. She was powerful. So it's a real mixed message when you want to know.
If there were a man, there would be no black cats in the pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah, right? There would be a halo instead of a black cat. Right.
But I feel like there's like, in your book, you talk about, like, there's like your mom came up against a women don't do that. You and Anne came up against women don't do that. But you all did that anyway.
Yeah.
She also had Hannah Dustin's DNA.
Right.
Because speaking of all the misogyny and everything, one of the things I loved reading in the book, Kicking and Dreaming, was that, Barracuda is my favorite Heart song. And I didn't know what it was about. I always assumed it was about a man, which it is. But can you tell that story? Because
it's a really pretty great story. We were really fresh-faced from Seattle kids with a new album, the first album, and like at some album release party or some party with a bunch of these slime balls in their satin jackets, the record industry guys. And they were really lechy, and they were, even back then it seemed a lot more like that that was the era of it. There's a lot of cocaine in that time. So it was really ego and slime balls like that. It was less so mind expanded as we'd come out of the late 60s with our pot and our LSD. It was all this weird sort of slime ball stuff going on. So the guy went over to Anne and said, how's your lover? And she's like, yeah, Mike, he's right over there. He's great. What? And he goes, no, I mean your sister lover. And it was like, we're not lovers, we're sisters, But because we had bare shoulders on the cover, I don't know. But there was something that he wanted, and it sort of came in. He had already kind of planted the salacious idea in the press. And so it was like, it was only their first time, I don't know. It was just, we were so offended because we were musicians. We were creative people trying to be like the Beatles or be the Beatles as much as we could be the Beatles. And it was it was such a belittling insult that we would be slime balls and sexy slime balls and try to get attention that way. That we were not credible as artists. So we had our artistic integrity was very ruffled at the time. And, we kind of got more used to it later, but we were so offended. And that's when Anne went and wrote the lyrics to Barracuda.
When I was growing up, of course, one of my favorite rock bands was Led Zeppelin. I had, they were it for me. I saw them at Madison Square Garden in '77.
Yeah.
And then this is a whole other conversation. But then when I got my first Heart album, I was like, oh my God, it was like mind blown. But one of the things that I was thinking about is that back when you guys were starting, there was a moment where Zeppelin walked into a club where you guys were playing Stairway to Heaven, but then fast forward decades later, and you guys are performing for them at the Kennedy Center Honors.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you something. I watched that again today because I hadn't
so
seen
good.
it in a long time. I was weeping.
Oh my God.
I was like, what's wrong? I was seriously, I'm not making that. David saw me on the couch. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. It was just so moving.
It's quite a moment. Not to mention the fact that we were huge Zeppelin fanatics the entire time and channeling Page and Plant on our own stages, as well as trying to write songs like them and coming off like them and looking kind of like them, until we got our perms and stuff. And, but having Jason Bonham that day on the drums, who was the son, obviously, of John Bonham, their original drummer who died, with a bowler, like John would wear, doing that song that they did with him, and then all of the reveals and reveals and reveals, opening out to the back of the building with, might as well have been a pipe organ too, it was everything and
choir,
everything else.
It was
incredible. It was so well crafted that the way that they musically directed that it was the finest. It was the finest, one of the finest moments I can remember being part of. Thank God I didn't screw it up.
Were you nervous?
Yes.
Were you? Because what I was thinking too, it starts with just you and Anne on the stage.
Yeah, I just play the guitar part by myself.
Were you? And you were playing the guitar
by
part
myself. Just no pressure.
And I was like, oh my God, she must have been terrified.
Totally. Because we had one rehearsal the day before, because it was December, and the one rehearsal we had was the day before, and we were on the road, so we didn't get more than one. And we got into town. We went straight to the rehearsal space. Everybody doing the show, working the show, were all volunteers. It's a benefit show, to benefit the arts. So standing outside waiting for a ride, my hands froze because it was December in DC.
My God.
And so I went straight into a rehearsal room to try to play, Stairway to Heaven without warming up at all and having practiced it at all. I knew I remembered it, but I forgot kind of. I was just, I'll just walk in, I'll play it. But my hands were frozen. I sort of remembered it, but not exactly remembered it. So the whole band and choir were there watching me just blow it with these frozen fingers. As the guy said, the guitar guy goes, "Look, I can shadow you. I can play it with you." It's like, no. My hands are just frozen right now. I could play this. I could do this. So I was like, no. So, I had to do it on my own by myself. That when the time came the next night.
So you were still dealing with that shit because he wouldn't have done that if you were a guy.
Well, I mean, it was nice of him to offer because they don't know if I could do it or not.
He knows who you are. He knows you can play that song.
But, who knows at my age how I can do like something like that anymore. I don't know. But it was a generous offer, but I turned it down. Diplomatically.
Well, you
who are some of the people who you get starstruck by? I know you were in love with the Beatles, but like who are some of the people that you get starstruck?
Well, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, Paul McCartney. I get starstruck by Elton John, by Bernie Taupin. I just finished his book, which is amazing, because of the creative collaboration there. And those songs are so deathless. Songs like Daniel and Someone Saved My Life and so many great songs. And those are I know these guys and I've been in rooms with them, but I can't hardly breathe, if I'm in the room with them. It's Neil Young is another one.
Oh, yeah. You've named all just like the top, like my favorite and Lauren's favorite.
Sounds like your record collection at the club.
Yeah, totally.
Joni Mitchell. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Joni.
Yeah.
Well, so we don't want to keep you too long. I know we got started a few minutes late.
It's okay. No problem.
We were talking and we haven't really been asking a lot of standard questions, but I was thinking a good question to ask you. Like, knowing everything you know now, what advice would you give your younger self?
I always like that question because even as my younger self, even as a kid younger self, I thought of my older self a lot. Like, I looked at older people and I thought what they must know that I don't know yet. And so I had a respect for my older self already as a younger self going forward, towards it. And so I couldn't tell myself then, but now I can tell myself, my younger self, to be super careful with imbibing, altering your state of mind, especially after the 80s.
Yeah.
And, even in the 60s and 70s, we dabbled with mind-altering stuff, but it was all very innocent, sort of, in the day, with the Beatles at the helm, and the Moody Blues were there for you. If you were tripping, if you were flying. So
now it's legal and regulated.
Yeah,
microdosing.
Now you can microdose.
Medical marijuana.
Exactly. So I mean, that's the better side of the story. If you're gonna do any altering at all, I think that's the way to, tell your younger self to go.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think I think you have to tell yourself your best advice a lot of times. What are your survival skills? Let me take stock of my survival skills. What are the things that I've kept in my pocket, with me, in my chest, in my heart, in my soul? And I think one of the best tools is humor, because you can't laugh everything off, and you can oftentimes you find yourself trying to make light of some really heavy shit, but then when you can look back and laugh on stuff, you get past it, you get a perspective on it, and it helps you it helps you recover. And I think, when you see great stories about people that have come through really disastrous life experiences, a lot of it is wars and shit, They get through it with songs and with stories and laughter and, telling and talking with each other, telling stories, cautionary tales, and songs, a lot of songs.
You are seem like you were kind of like an old soul, but a lot of like what you're saying seems like wisdom that comes with being older, which is really learning to listen to yourself and not take things so seriously and not hanging on to things. Would you say that it's more so now, or have you always been like that?
Oh, I always considered myself a wise old owl when I was even little. Like, I always had the feeling that I'd been here around before. Some people, like my two sons, are twins, but they're fraternal. They're not identical. And one of them is a really old soul, and one of them is a younger soul. And one of them is really interior, and one of them is more, outgoing. One of my sons just did the ceremony for a wedding I attended over the weekend. He was the minister. So, I was really... Was
that Jeff's daughter?
No, Jeff's daughter, yes, got married to her girlfriend, actually.
Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. So it's like
known each
your
other
two
since
families.
School. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
That
our
is
son
beautiful.
did the ceremony.
Yeah, so my
so
son
nice.
did the ceremony for his kind of adopted bigger sister, Julia, who got married to her girlfriend, who she's loved for most of her life since they were teenagers together, but they both had to kind of figure it out for a long time before they decided to be a couple. But, you love who you love, and I'm all for love. Oh, man. What the world needs now.
Yes, sing it, Nancy.
Yeah. Oops, copyright. Oops.
I love that. And I love what you're saying about, souls and old souls and believing you've been here before.
Yeah.
I always, I don't know if I've told this story on our podcast before, but when I met my husband, I was 15 years old. He was 20 at the time. And I went to interview. He was my boss at my first job. And I walked into this interview. And when I saw him, it was like I was in a tunnel, because I was like, I feel like I have known him in a million lifetimes.
That's so cool.
It was the weirdest thing.
That's
I was like,
cool.
I loved
believe
him
it.
before I said one word to him. And I was like, I'm marrying him. I loved him. And I felt that way
That's so
about,
great.
another friend
Yeah.
of mine. But that's how I was like, I know I've been here before.
That's how I felt when I knew that I loved Jeff. It was like, this was written in the stars. This is really meant to be. This was preordained.
And the image of you thinking about your older self and what you don't know, because most of us were like, we know everything. Like, I'm my teenager, but you were like thinking about.
I was like 12, and I was
your
thinking,
older, wiser self.
I was thinking it like, when I turn 30, I'm gonna smile at myself as a 30-year-old right now. So I went, and then when I turned 30, I remembered it, and I smiled at my 12-year-old self, just like for the goof of it. But
I love that.
isn't that cool? Like,
I see a
there's
self-help book in your future.
maybe I could make some coin, Yeah.
No, seriously,
bank.
like that's what I mean. Like, so much that I've read about you and so much I know from talking to you, I'm like, that's someone who's like had that sort of inner beingness for a very long time. So.
Well, that's being a songwriter, I think, too. And the love of great songs and music and doing music, being around music, cherishing the great music we have that we're lucky to have. Like the songs I did with Eric Tesmer, to go back full circle, like we worked on at the club house. That was so much fun to do. And right now I've got a couple extra songs kind of loosely done that I want to put, like, I'm trying to figure out a way to offer them up as at my merch booth on the Heart Tour, like So I'll talk to David about that too, like maybe putting some of the songs I did with Eric, offering them up as merchandise on the tour, on the Heart Tour.
Are you coming through Austin on your tour? Because I really want to see you.
Does Austin have electricity? Yes, we'll be there.
And water.
And water. Yeah, they might have a washer and dryer at the arena. Yeah.
They're still on the grid. So,
They're still on the grid.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy, this was such a pleasure to connect with you in this way.
You too. Absolutely. Really fun. I could talk about myself for hours.